this episode is about the end of the most peaceful time of Atlantis. So not only was life simpler, it was also very satisfying. Even so, people had complaints. Anyway, most of the complaints centered around the rules required of people in order to be members of our society. Well, they didn't feel completely free. There were three major issues that people had. Many felt sad for the primitives who lived hand to mouth, but we were not permitted to help or interfere, or at least not directly. Another complaint was not being able to have multiple children, like they could in the early days. The last major complaint was the personal limitations over travelling the world and associating with the other humans. People expected small changes, but big changes happened fairly quickly once Uran was overthrown. People had many children, and those children grew up and had more children. Massive exponential population growth because everyone had an unlimited lifespan. More people meant more demand for resources, land, energy, education, food, etc. The concept of money was introduced. It was theoretically in order to ensure a fair distribution of resources for a person's contribution to society. Power and wealth could now be achieved, and materialism was suddenly fashionable. The full 120-year process of education was abandoned, and only those that could pay were fully educated. People that were born into this new world had therefore all the technology that came with it, but many lived without the understanding or education behind it. Over the next 100 years, the majority of the wealth moved into the hands of the few. Atlantis had previously considered everyone as equal, but now it was more stratified. People worked for remuneration. The lowest of the new class structure worked for very little remuneration, and of course some people started to suffer. Not only was this situation very contrary to the way it was under Uran, but it was very different to what most people actually expected, even those that supported the overthrow. Anyway, back to what happened. Some jobs became high-status jobs after Bela became leader. The high-status jobs received greater remuneration. One of these jobs was the keeper of the crystals. Much pomp and ceremony was devised to go with this prestigious job. And there was much pressure on the people receiving this prestige and this large quantity of money to deliver more powerful technology, but without the controls to ensure that what they were doing was right. Radiant energy was in use from the time of Uran, but as demand for energy grew, the scientists devised new ways to amplify the energy available. Some of these techniques were not without risk. Anyway, the first 100 years wasn't too bad, even with all the change. People felt more free. There were many good things happening, but at the same time, the population grew and grew. The amount of anti-aging cure in storage started to deplete quickly. It soon became only something the rich could afford. Without Uran, there would be no more cure. Many people who thought that the takeover by Bela was a good thing changed their minds within 200 years or so of the takeover. Some even left Tantal to join Uran. But joining Uran became more and more difficult to contact Uran's people and get permission to join them. But the remaining Tantal scientists were busy trying to maximize the technology left behind. The technology developed by Uran combined the resonant qualities of crystal with the energy from within the planet, mainly through underground water systems. But as the population grew, it could not sustain those that required it. The scientists devised a way to apply sunlight energy through a massive disk onto a crystal obelix. Note, purpose of obelisks. They were to transmit, receive, monitor energy and communications, etc. Anyway, back to the story. Needless to say, the monitoring aspect was not maintained after Uran. Problem. There was not enough energy to service all the people. But the techniques they were using to increase the amount of energy had the potential under certain weather conditions to be very dangerous. And too much of the wrong sort of weather? Well, you can guess. It was like having a weapon that was aimed at its own creator. Bit poetic, really. So the place ended up being overpopulated, without sufficient resources, and with some somewhat dangerous technology every now and again causing major problems. And the people were getting more and more unhappy with the situation. And that is why the end of the era of Bela was one of civil unrest. But that is another story.